Hi, everybody. I know we still have a few people logging in to join us, but I wanted to go ahead and get started by welcoming everybody to today's webinar, Hot Tips for Cool Savings, Boost Efficiency with TrueFuel. I'm Gabby Parker, and I'm here with Bob Peckham and Ethan Sweeney, two of our TrueFuel specialists and sales experts. For everyone who has made it time in their busy day to be with us today, welcome and thank you for hanging out with us for the next hour or so. We hope this webinar will leave you feeling to tackle on any challenges that come your way, but before we get to that, I just have a few housekeeping items I wanted to go over. This webinar will be recorded and will be sent to you within the next 24 hours, so don't worry if you get interrupted or have to jump off the call. You'll get the recording tomorrow so you can review at your convenience. Next, I wanted to let you all know that we will be doing a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So please feel free to use the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel to ask any questions at any time throughout the webinar so that we can answer them at the end. With all that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Bob and Ethan and let them get this show on the road.
Wow. Thank you, Gabby. I appreciate it. Nice to meet everybody. Hello. Quick introductions, I think, are probably a great place to start. My name is Bob Peckham. I'm based out of Rochester, New York. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. Most of that was with a company called Vnomics, which is how I came into Tenstreet. I'm pretty heavily involved in the industry. I'm on the board of directors for the Trucking Association of New York. And with the private fleet in mind, I have my CTP certification. So I get to have a pretty good understanding of those different situations that we run across. And I think it's helpful with regards to this presentation we're going to give today. And also, I got Ethan here with me. Ethan, you want to give a quick introduction?
Happy to. Thanks, Bob. My name's Ethan Sweeney, and I'm on the customer success side here at Tenstreet TrueFuel. I also been in the industry for just about 12 years and actually came into the transportation industry from the tech side of things. So I've been working with fleets and TrueFuel for just about a dozen years. I also, on the private fleet side, have my CTP certification and absolutely love talking fuel programs, analytics, coaching. So I'm excited to connect with folks after the call to answer any questions anybody might have.
Absolutely. And Ethan and I go way back before that too. So you'll probably feel that while we're in this call today. Ethan, why don't we jump to slide one? Perfect. So this little chart here, I always sort of like to discuss this a little bit with people when we're having conversation about how to boost efficiency and some other things that we're going to be discussing today. This, if you haven't figured it out or read on the screen, this is the average retail price over time for diesel fuel. You will see that diesel fuel is again on the rise a little bit, and it goes through its seasonal ups and downs. But one thing that I wanted to point out on here, and Ethan rightfully pointed out to me this morning, according to ATRI, fuel is considered the #2 cost for fleets at this point in time. Typically, it switches back and forth between personnel and fuel costs. Well, because of this volatility that you see in the chart here, and as we all know, the global volatility and other things that are at play when it comes to the cost of fuel, it's one of the things that we like to try and work with fleets to coordinate in a coordinated effort, go in and really try to minimize the fuel cost. And there's only a handful of ways to do that. Some of them are obvious, new equipment and other pieces of hardware that are in place that can help with that. But there's also the way that we're going to discuss today. So Ethan, if you would push the button here. And that's the driver. How do we deal with the driver with regards to their fuel efficiency? I hope that didn't come across too negative. How do we deal with the driver? But it's something that's often overlooked. We pay attention to things like trailer skirts and high efficiency vehicles and all great things. But what we don't pay attention to is the fact that the driver has the potential to really affect about 30% of the fuel use in the truck, even on today's modern automated transmission vehicles. I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And Ethan will too, I'm sure. So we do that through a slightly different method than everything else. And we do that by focusing on the driver, paying attention and dealing with reporting back from the vehicle and other tools to really coach these drivers to be more fuel efficient. So while we encourage everybody to do all the fuel efficient things with regards to purchasing, equipment, aerodynamics, streamlining, all the good things, the one thing that we want to really focus on is the thing that has the biggest impact, which is the driver. So, perfect. So I always start out the conversations when we're looking at this, paying attention to ways that we can track this. And MPG tends to be one of the most common ways, and fleets put things into effect to try and help steer the MPG. They do that often through incentive programs. They do it through, targeted focuses and all sorts of other gimmicky ways, but always come back to a little bit of a problem. They're very hard to administer these processes. And I would say the reason it's hard to do is because we're all focusing on MPG. Now, I will not argue that MPG is an important metric when we're looking at how we're best spending our fuel, but I think it's the wrong metric. And I'm going to try to defend why I think it's the wrong metric and encourage you to pay attention to why we think we have the right metric for that. So when I look at, don't go too far ahead. When I look at this page, it shows a lot of things. The things that I see on here are all things that affect MPG. Things like temperature, terrain, the weather itself, if it's raining or snowing, the equipment that the drivers are using, traffic, what type of, how old the equipment is, what type of maintenance level it's at. Are they at the beginning of their maintenance cycle? They just got a fresh oil change, or are they at the end of it that stuff's dirty in there and maybe not as efficient when they're looking at everything? Are the tires properly inflated? All of these factors affect MPG. But we believe most of the factors that I just mentioned, if not all of them, are not anything the driver can affect. So when you put into place a program that basically focuses on MPG, and we just acknowledge, or at least I hope you agree with me, that all those things I just mentioned are outside of the driver's control, I think that points to the fact that we're focused on the wrong thing. And the wrong thing, again, is MPG. So let's dig in. Ethan, now's the perfect time to hit the button. This is what I believe we should focus on, the things that the driver can control. And so Tenstreet does that through our different levels of True Fuel, which is the product name that we're going to be talking about today. We have three and a half levels of True Fuel. One level is free. You can test some of this today. It's called True Fuel Bronze. We're happy to talk about it later on. Ethan and I can field calls for that. This is a basic level, just gets you into the notion of paying attention to the driver focus. I should say the driver overview, how the fleet's doing if the drivers turn the tool on. Then we have a silver level, which gives you a little bit more information. It draws information from non-traditional focus, which is tablets and drivers' phones. That's the silver level. Now we start to dig in a little deeper. But what I want to focus on today is the gold level. The gold level is available with 4 different partners of ours. One of those partners merged together recently, so I'll actually call it 5 partners. We deal with Geotab, we deal with Motive, we deal with Samsara, and the 2 that merged together recently are Trimble or Platform Science and Trimble, PeopleNet, and Platform Science. So those 2 or 3 in the end just merged together recently. So now they're all Platform Science. So those different partners that we work with, we can use this True Fuel Gold. And here's where we focus. We isolate the things that are centered around a driver. The 4 things that we look at are acceleration management, idle management, speed management, and speed consistency. So what does that mean? Well, the driver, how they accelerate, even in an automated transmission, has a tremendous effect on their fuel spend, their fuel use, I should say. As they accelerate, if they accelerate hard, like a jackrabbit start or a drag race start, whatever you want to call it, that will make the truck rev higher in the rev range. It will make it spend more fuel, but very little benefit with regards to acceleration or even capabilities of the truck. These modern trucks have downsped the engines. That is a term that's used to say they're producing more power at low RPMs in the goal of having higher efficiency. But the driver can override that through throttle input and gear selection, whether they go to manual mode or even at the high end of the gears if they turn off or override the overdrive or top gear focus of that transmission. This is something that all trucks can have that overridden on basically through driver input. And it's often done. We see it all the time. So paying attention to this, assigning a value of how they're doing, and identifying how much waste they have through another function we have, I'll mention in a moment, are all things that we can do to really focus in on that driver and make sure they're being efficient. We also give them self-help tools. So our tools through Pulse or Pulse at Work, another tool that's very powerful to use in cab on all of those platforms. It gives you additional Tenstreet capabilities as well, by the way. But all of that can be viewed in cab on their self portal through Pulse or Pulse at Work. This is a great tool and it gamifies it a little bit as well for the drivers. Next, we'll talk about idle management. As you all know, idle is a very powerful waste of fuel. We don't want drivers idling, but we do need to pay attention to some stuff. You know, when they're sitting there, if it's too hot or too cold, these are things we need to pay attention to a little bit. And different levels of our system give you some different capabilities here. But in the end, having the driver see the idle waste, not only in time they're idling, but how much it costs the company, is a tremendous benefit to identifying and then arresting the waste. We do all of that quite well. Speed management, we're looking at the top speed of that driver, how well they're managing the speed. And as they go faster, speed will waste fuel at cubed of the speed. So in other words, every 3 miles an hour you go, you actually double the output or the waste profile of that truck. And then finally, speed consistency or use of cruise control is another way we can look at this. When a driver's at that optimum speed on the highway, we see great efficiency. But as soon as they start to do the sort of accordion effect when cars or trucks are slowing down and speeding up and they're not managing that well, we see a lot of waste in that profile. We're managing that, again, paying attention to all of these and identifying the waste. So with that, I love this next line that's on this page, and it's something that really separates us from others. We are the only technology that quantifies the fuel loss due to these individual inefficient driving behaviors that I just mentioned. And then we calculate and measure the fuel efficiency performance metric, which we call a true fuel score, and identify also to the actual fuel wasted. So you can see all of this. The drivers can see how their inefficient driving behaviors actually cost the company. This helps solidify something I talked about a moment ago, or helps create an easier step, if you will, for what I talked about a moment ago, and that is creating some sort of fuel incentive program. Using these metrics and these tools becomes very easy. It's not sloppy anymore like it typically is when you're creating a system that looks at all different types of vehicles or different load profiles or age of vehicles or driver scenarios. Our system levels the playing field. So all of these things put in together, we show their efficiency, we show their wasted fuel in gallons and or gallons per 1,000 miles. We show all of this and again, make a very fair playing field for the drivers, and it becomes much simpler for the fleet. So Ethan, if you would switch slides. This is a progressive slide, Ethan. I'll give you a warning when I'm ready. This is going to talk a little bit about some of these differences that I've just identified. So I just talked to you about fuel efficiency, and fuel economy is what MPG is. They're not the same. I want to show you how that manifests in a fleet. What is the difference between fuel economy and fuel efficiency, and how can you really use that, or how does it benefit you as a fleet? So I'll give you the example that we see here. So driver one in this scenario, very simple scenario, is a long haul driver, highway, heavy load. That's what his profile is. Driver two is a variable haul where he has highway and city roads. Pickup and delivery scenario might be a better way to describe it. They have slightly different profiles. So it did make it harder when we look at the old MPG analysis that you would do. So Ethan, would you click the slide so we can see the next part here? So the question is, who's a better driver? Driver 1 had 7.5 actual MPG, miles driven, gallons used, 7.5. That looks pretty appealing. Driver 2 had 6.4 actual MPG, same scenario, miles driven, gallons used, 6.4. Now, we already said a moment ago, they're different driver profiles. So that creates a question, who's the better driver? Well, using our system, we're identifying that efficiency, not the MPG. By the way, they tend to go in the same direction. If they're improving one or the other, they're seeing some improvements on the other side. So, they tend to go hand in hand, but they're not one-to-one. So what we see here is driver 1 with 7.5, he should have achieved 8.2 miles per gallon. He was on the highway, didn't have to change speed much. He should have done better than he did. He was only 91% efficient. That 7.5 sounds pretty good. And in traditional systems, he probably would have gotten the accolades and or a bonus, right? You hit over the 7.2 mile per gallon mark, great job. Where driver 2 is working his tail off, he only got 6.4. But thinking of the story here, he was in the highway, he was in the city, he was doing pickup and delivery type stuff. Different profile. He could have only achieved 6.5 MPG. Not as much of a gap there. The difference is small. And because of that, he was 98% efficient. We've been incentivizing the wrong person all along. Driver 1 was not as good on his efficiency as driver 2, but he had a better profile, and it made it easier for him to get a higher MPG. So this is how it manifests for the fleets. I'll give a simple example too, just in easier terms. If driver 1 had a load of pillows and he drove down the highway and his van was cubed out, his dry van was cubed out, it was full of pillows stuffed in there, pretty light, didn't have a lot of things to do as far as changing speed or accelerating off or on the on-ramps. It was an easy trip for him. I would expect that driver to get better MPG than if the same driver on even the same day or different day, same piece of hardware, you loaded him up with bricks. He was maxed out in weight, not in volume. And you put him through a mountain pass where he has to go up and down hills, slow down, follow traffic, all that stuff. I guarantee you everybody here knows the first scenario down the highway, he's going to get better MPG. Well, it's no different in this scenario, except you have so many variables that we're paying attention to for you and we're quantifying it. So that's what we're going to show you. Oops. And based on that, I think Ethan takes the next slide here.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I also wanted to add something here too. So I've been working with fleets, like I said, for over a decade now, and one of the most common stories that we hear is exactly the scenario where drivers have different responsibilities, different job types, and so the best a fleet could do when trying to use MPG for identifying driver performance and potentially incentivizing or coaching is to come up with a really complex way of breaking out their fleets, their routes, their truck types, and having a handful of different sort of target metrics all tied to MPG across the same fleet. And whenever we start showing how impactful and directly tied to a driver's performance the true fuel efficiency metric is, it's an absolute game changer, because now we don't have to manage a complex or convoluted system of was he in this truck or this truck because they have different spec, was he on this route, or so on and so forth. Rather, it is a single metric that's fair across the entire driver pool, simply because it factors out everything outside of the driver's control and solely focuses on driver behavior. So I just wanted to add that there, because from my experience, that's been my takeaway regarding the metric. So I'm going to jump in from the customer success side and start talking about and showcasing the tool sets that fleets that wants to have an impactful fuel program really needs to consider and implement in order to make a significant change in their drivers' behavior. So the first thing that we're going to start out with is a tool that is the TrueFuel Driver Scorecard. Now, anytime that a fleet is working with a driver to change behavior or change performance, the fleet and the driver have to be able to answer 3 critical questions. And those are, how am I doing? Where can I improve? And how can I improve? And so as we go through the True Fuel scorecard for each of these, answering each of these questions, we're going to showcase how easy it is for a driver to be able to self-serve, and then also some of the unique takeaways, the differentiators that True Fuel comes with compared to other systems that are out there. So what we're looking at right here is our True Fuel scorecard inside Driver Pulse. And now Bob mentioned that at UC, just back in May, Tenstreet announced a really cool development that I'm really excited about because it's going to have a tremendous impact on driver and fleet experience and communications in the field, which is Pulse at Work. So everybody's familiar with Driver Pulse. Pulse at Work was designed and intended to be the tool by which drivers and fleets can collaborate, communicate, share in cab, integrated with telematics providers. So drivers no longer have to use their personal phones. Instead, it can be directly on the tablet that's in the cab. And so inside of Pulse at Work, the driver has visibility into their True Fuel scorecard. And so what we're looking at on the screen here is the answer to those 3 questions. First one, how am I doing? Starting out right here at the top, we're going to present the driver with their True Fuel score. And so in this case, out of 100%, we can see that this driver is operating at a 97%. Now, True Fuel is also going to provide some additional helpful information to the driver right on this screen. That comes in the form of a trending indicator, which is an arrow right next to their True Fuel score. How am I doing this week compared to last week? Am I improving with a green arrow up, or is my performance degrading a little bit with a red arrow down? So now I can see not only my score in the moment, but also my trend in performance. And working with fleets, a common thing that we've heard is that drivers have a competitive side. And so to help either instill some friendly competition or even just instill some personal motivation, True Fuel is also going to provide the ranking right next to the True Fuel score. So out of my fleet, how performant am I? In this case, I'm in 12th place. Now, as a pretty competitive person, I'm going to set the personal goal for me to get into that top 10. So now I'm going to start asking questions. Okay, where can I improve, and then how? So to answer the question of where, immediately below the analytics at the top is quantified in gallons per behavior how much fuel this driver wasted due to inefficient operation of their vehicle. And so we can see very quickly here that this driver has the biggest opportunity for improvement with respect to their acceleration behaviors. So easing into the throttle compared to mashing on the throttle and over revving the truck. Second for this driver is going to be speeding, and so on down the list. Okay, so now as a driver, I've identified where I am today. I know where I have the biggest opportunity for improvement, which is acceleration and speeding. Now I have a couple questions with how I might be able to change my behavior. How can I go about affecting that change? Immediately below the quantified fuel waste in gallons are tailored training modules for each driver behavior that True Fuel focuses on, intended to help educate the driver, train them, and coach them on how to improve their performance with respect to each of these 4 behaviors. So on one page, on one scorecard, we're answering all 3 critical questions that drivers have in the search for and desire for improving their fuel performance. Now, the other benefits that come with True Fuel integrated with Pulse at Work or Driver Pulse is that in Pulse at Work, in case folks haven't heard, there is no capability for the driver to be able to search for jobs. So it really is a great tool for a driver to be able to collaborate with their fleet and their employers. And inside of Driver Pulse, True Fuel also has automated coaching notifications that are pushed directly to the driver, encouraging them and taking them directly to this scorecard so that they can get some high-level feedback on how they're doing and then use the scorecard to dig into their performance and how they can improve. Now, if the driver has, common routes or even just wants to set milestones for themselves throughout the day. I'm going to back up just a little bit here and show the trip by trip performance. So inside the scorecard, drivers can now start to self-serve their performance today compared to yesterday, or even on this trip this afternoon compared to this trip this morning, by using the different tools inside the scorecard. So it really is a full circle solution to help coach this driver on how to improve their fuel performance. One of the other benefits that I almost forgot to mention here is that it's also integrated with Tenstreet Rewards, which is a turnkey fuel incentive program that, working with your account manager, we can help to configure so that it is set it up and it'll automatically run based on the parameters you give it with respect to budget, with respect to how many drivers, with respect to a target goal as far as efficiency. It really takes all of the guesswork and manual labor out of the equation by automating the incentive program. Okay. So from my experience also, I'll share that fleets with the most impactful fuel program typically have a secondary coaching process in place where driver trainers are connecting with drivers and creating a feedback loop. This feedback loop is a great way to, potentially answer questions. If a driver just simply doesn't know on their route how to change their behavior with respect to one attribute, or if they're not fully understanding of how the system works after the initial training, a secondary coaching is a great way to get those questions asked and answered, and then also drive home the importance of the program to the fleet so that drivers know, hey, my efforts here are meaningful and impactful for my employer. I'm on board. I'm going to help out however I can. And so what we're going to jump into next is a demo of the TrueFuel tool integrated into the Express portal. And in here, we're going to start to see the analytics that Bob and I have been talking about so far this morning. So as Bob mentioned, you should have access to TrueFuel, whether it be the free bronze tier, or if you have a higher tier, the TrueFuel tool should be in your tools menu inside of the Express portal. So if you're looking at the Express portal right now, or after we get off the call, I would encourage you to go to the tools menu and see if you have visibility to TrueFuel. If you do, awesome. Poke around, familiarize yourself, and then come back to us with questions. If you don't have visibility to it, please reach out to your account manager, to your point of contact at Tenstreet to get that enabled, because you can get some free visibility into current fleet performance along with opportunity for improvement. So sticking with the gold level here, I'm going to walk through. I find it's really helpful to go through a presentation like this in the form of a day in the life of a driver trainer. So as a driver trainer, I have a goal of quickly and efficiently identifying which drivers I should be coaching because they're going to have the biggest bang for the buck. And also, which drivers do I have opportunity to thank or congratulate? And as I'm bringing those conversations up with the drivers, what are some meaningful and actionable insights that I can discuss with this driver? So that's how I'm going to shape our demo here today. So starting out at the top of the TrueFuel overview tab, you can see that we have our high-level fleet-wide aggregate of our TrueFuel score. Now, this fleet is operating using our demo data here at 96.9. Great performance. In the past 1 week, we've only lost 111, almost 112 gallons due to driver behavior. And if we look at our trend over the past little bit here, we can see that, we've had a slight uptick in overall performance, which is great. Okay, so now I've got a quick snapshot of where we are today. Where can we improve? Immediately below the estimated fuel loss is going to be quantified in gallons again, the amount of fuel wasted due to each driver behavior. So now as the trainer, I can quickly prioritize where I want to spend our coaching conversation. So for my fleet, we have the biggest amount of fuel loss due to speed consistency or speed management when we're up at cruising speed, and then also idle. Okay, most common area of opportunity for improvement is idle for sure. So that's what I'm going to stick to as I go through this. But to talk through the tool sets. You can see as we scroll down, TrueFuel then provides actionable insights into each behavior separated out, and by providing a top and bottom performing driver list for each category. So here, using demo data, we can at least showcase the concept, which is drivers with the biggest opportunity for improvement, or the worst performers, and the drivers with the best. So very quickly, I have an actionable list of who to coach and who to thank or congratulate. So now I'm going to scroll down to idle, because that's where my fleet is focused up on improving. And we can see trending over time, we're doing a little bit better later in the week compared to where we were at the end of last week, which is great. But I still want to say, who do I have the biggest opportunity to coach with respect to idle? And so I'm going to pick on my colleague Amanda here. So Amanda has the biggest opportunity for improvement with respect to idle. Clicking on her name is going to bring up her subject view. Now, I imagine everybody's familiar with the subject view, but we'll go through it here just to make sure. Individual page for each driver inside of my fleet, and clicking on Amanda's name brought us to the TrueFuel page inside the subject view. And so now very quickly I can get some actionable analytics here to help me. Now my goal at this stage is to identify talking points to help make a meaningful and impactful coaching conversation with Amanda. So high level, starting out at the top, over the past week, I can see that Amanda's TrueFuel score was 89.5, meaning the inverse is, what's that, 10.5? So 10.5% of her fuel consumed was wasted due to driver behavior. And for the week, that gets us to 34 gallons wasted due to driver behavior. And Amanda's biggest opportunity here is idle. So I'm going to start looking through her data and finding opportunities or talking points to make this coaching conversation really meaningful and impactful. So I'm going to scroll down to the idling section. Again, TrueFuel is broken out into each of the behaviors and automatically provides us with the top 5 major idle events to help shape our coaching conversation. Now, here's where we get into what Bob touched on, which is the configurability of TrueFuel. So everybody's aware of idle. Everybody's aware that it does happen, and we want to get a better handle on how we can reasonably go after it while still being mindful of driver comfort and driver safety in the elements when they're out on the road, right? And so with TrueFuel, not only does it quantify in minutes the amount of time spent idling, it also quantifies in gallons how much fuel was wasted due to each idling event, and then provides some analytics around the ambient temperature of the area where that truck was parked when it was idling. So now we can start to shape the picture of what environment was my driver in when they were out on the road. And this is really helpful in determining whether an event was coachable or not. So with TrueFuel, we actually have the ability to configure idling to take into account the ambient temperature. And say, for example, I operate in the wintertime in Minnesota and I want my drivers to be comfortable. So it is okay to idle anytime it's below 40 degrees outside. And I also have a section of the fleet that operates in Southern California, which gets quite hot. And so in order to keep my drivers safe and comfortable, I want to enable them to idle when it's above, let's say, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. TrueFuel can actually take those parameters into consideration and not only identify and report back the ambient temperature during each idling event, but if those temperatures are outside of our thresholds that we have set, it'll actually automatically catalog those idling events as approved. So if I'm in Minnesota in January and it's below 0, the idling event will still provide all the analytics that we're showing here, but it will show it as approved because of that ambient temperature. Okay. So now showcasing really quickly the other areas of TrueFuel and driver behaviors. We have acceleration events, we have speed consistency events, and we have speeding events. So now I've used this data to come up with coaching talking points for my conversation with Amanda. Now, from my experience, face-to-face is always going to be the best opportunity to coach a driver to have a meaningful and impactful conversation. However, totally understanding that that's not always easy to accomplish. With TrueFuel integrated with Tenstreet Express and Driver Pulse or Pulse at Work, we now have the opportunity to leverage the power of Tenstreet's portfolio of tools to get in touch with the driver. So I'm going to click on the communications tab, and that's going to open up the other ways that I can connect with this driver. So if I can't do face-to-face, I can very quickly send a message. I can send an email. I can create a video chat. I can log a phone call. All ways that I can have a secondary coaching conversation with my driver at a time that is safe and convenient for them, even though their schedule may not align with mine. Now, in the event that we have a coaching conversation in person, or we simply just want to make a note of the coaching conversations that we've had, this new note button is going to allow us to log a note about our coaching conversation with our driver, and then catalog and archive it so that when we're bringing up the driver's subject view, we can start to get an idea of, okay, in this case, it looks like we've spoken with Amanda a few times about idling. So maybe I'll use that in my coaching conversation as well. All of it's intended to help shape the conversation so that it really resonates and it's using this driver's data in order to make a meaningful and impactful change. Okay, so that's a quick high-level demonstration of TrueFuel inside of Express. Now, Bob and I have talked about the power of TrueFuel and the tool set that we have available to us. The next thing that I sort of want to show as we start to wrap up here is what does that actually look like when implemented into the field. So what I pulled in here are a couple of stories that I really like to talk about. Dare I even say brag about, because it's some of our rockstar clients who have used the TrueFuel tools, who have implemented the best practices that we've advised to. And I also have a cheat sheet that I'm going to share with everybody after the webinar here. It's our next slide. We'll touch on it, but it's best practices towards executing or designing and executing a successful fuel program. These two fleets of our many customers done just that. And so what I have here are examples of established client who's been on the network for, it's been just over a year. They're right at the top here. And then a relatively new client who's still ramping up their successes, but realizing a really significant savings along the way. So starting out at the top here, this fleet operates around 80 trucks across the country. And when they started out, their overall TrueFuel score, their efficiency was in the mid 80s, meaning roughly 15% of their fuel that they were consuming was being wasted due to driver behavior. So really great opportunity for fuel savings. How did this fleet go about realizing such an incredible change here? Starting out, we're at 84. Very quickly, they launched TrueFuel coaching. So drivers have the TrueFuel tools in their cabs directly on their ELD tablets. They are also self-serving their own performance data and receiving that automated coaching directly from Driver Pulse or Pulse at Work. That showed a significant improvement pretty quickly over time here and jumped us up to near 90%. We sort of teetered out here just at about 89%. So then they kicked it into overdrive by implementing an incentive program using the TrueFuel efficiency metric compared to the MPG metric that they had been using in the past. Again, they had 3 different types of operations, very different for each driver, very different regional or sort of locations around the country, different responsibilities. And so MPG just really wasn't cutting it for a fuel incentive program. So they centered up on TrueFuel's efficiency metric. They launched an incentive program, announced it, launched it, announced it again, educated again, along with the TrueFuel secondary coaching program that they have and the tool set that the drivers have. This really skyrocketed them into changing their overall efficiency by 10%. So when we talk about True Fuel helping fleets reduce their fuel consumption between 3 and 10%, this is one of the fleets that we showcase as being on the top end of that fuel savings. 10% reduction in annual fuel spend by improving their overall efficiency. And so this fleet of round number 80 trucks is saving 6,000 gallons per month, every month, as they continue to operate at this mid 90s efficiency. So really impressive, and I'm excited to see what else they accomplish from a savings perspective, because they're not done yet. They're going after more. Now, the second client that we have here as a sample is going to be our relatively newer client. They just came on the network back in January, and they have also kicked off the secondary coaching program. Drivers have access to their own they can self-serve their own performance data, and they have automated coaching tools that help them learn how and when they're operating that truck inefficiently. And so over time here, I just grabbed the last 3 months from a rolling view just to show the progress that they're making. Within the first month, they improved their overall efficiency by 1%. They're tracking to 3% right now, which for this size fleet, around 200, 250 trucks, they're saving on average 11,000 gallons per month just by changing these driver behaviors. And we can see that reflected in the chart here by showing the amount of fuel that they wasted per 1,000 miles is steadily going down. And it's been on a downward trajectory since we started partnering with this client. Now, they've kicked off a secondary coaching program. The drivers have the tools that they need to answer those 3 questions. How am I doing? Where can I improve? And how can I improve? They're also in the process of designing an incentive program that they plan on kicking off here in Q3. So really excited for that stage, because I think it's really going to help jump, like we saw with this other fleet, really going to help jump their overall performance. Now, the other thing that I wanted to share with this fleet as well is that they're also using True Fuel analytics to monitor the impact of new electronic APUs that they're outfitting on some of their fleet. And so they're using the data from True Fuel to be able to quantify the ROI of installing these electronic APUs to help curb driver idling, and using the fuel saved from that to help factor into their ROI for that program as well. So not only are they changing driver behavior, they're also using analytics to help assess and make operational decisions that are going to help their fleet save fuel. So really great success story here too. Now, as I mentioned, this is the takeaway that I had prepped for everybody, and this is what I will make sure everybody has access to after the webinar here. And so it's going to break out from its best practices for an incentive, for a fuel performance program intended to help drivers improve their fuel performance and thereby reduce fuel consumption. And I split it out into 2 different camps, even though you're going to see that there's a lot of overlap between the 2. It is what are the key takeaways that work best for fleets, and what are the key takeaways of what works for drivers when it comes to designing, implementing, and executing a successful fuel program. So I'll make sure everybody has this after the webinar concludes here, but I want to make sure that we have some time for some Q&A. So I will look to Gabby here to see if we've had any questions come through, or if Bob, maybe you've seen any questions, or is there anything that you also wanted to add to this as well?
Oh, Ethan, I think you did great, good examples and follow through on this. I don't see any questions coming through, but that could just be operator error too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ethan and Bob, both of y'all. I don't have any questions showing up on my end either as of right now. However, if there are anything that y'all need to ask, the emails are right here. Ethan Sweeney at Tenstreet and Robert.Peckham at Tenstreet.com. And yes, thank you so much for attending, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the time, and don't hesitate to reach out if you're like me. I always come up with a question after I get off the phone. So don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us or through your main points of contact at Tenstreet. They'll pull us in as well. So thanks so much for being here.
But